Okay. Welcome to Grounded and Soaring, our podcast that explores how we might raise healthy kids in a too often unhealthy world. My name is Terry Dubow, and I'm the Director of Communications and Story at Marin Montessori School. And today we're going to spend about 20 minutes or so delving into a topic at the heart of many parental concerns, which is the acceleration of adolescence, kids growing up too fast. And today we're joined by Eluna Antle, who's an experienced elementary guide, and Carla Rummo, a parent who witnessed the transformative power of the 6th year of elementary, which is what we're talking about. So welcome, Eluna and Carla.
Thank you so much. Good to be here.
Thanks, Terry.
Happy to do it. I'm glad you're here. So it's a big topic. So I'm going to set the stage a little bit. And so we are living in an era where the boundaries of adolescence are shifting. There's research that indicates that the markers of adolescence are appearing earlier, not just biologically, though that is true, but also in social and emotional contexts. The acceleration brings a whole slew of challenges. There's increased academic demands, complex social dynamics, and a digital world that never sleeps. And just to define the terms, what we talk about when we talk about accelerated adolescence, we're referring to earlier onset of adolescent behavior and attitudes, such as the desire for independence, although that we're for that, but maybe a specific kind of independence. Exposure to social media influences, peer pressure, and awareness of adult issues, etc. So these changes can often occur before children are emotionally or mentally equipped to handle them, which can lead to an increased stress and anxiety among kids. So big issue. Carla, your mom, who was with kids this age, when you were weighing your options for schools for your kids, were these some of your concerns? And what else were you worried about? What were you hoping for?
Yes, definitely. These were some of my concerns, primarily around social media and smartphone usage was something that I wanted to keep at bay for as long as possible. And so I thought a lot about, or we thought a lot about different school communities and how common having a smartphone was in that community. And certainly COVID played into that. I think it accelerated the penetration of phones at a younger age. And I completely understand that, but I think it just made that more pressing for us as we thought about it in terms of our timing with our kids. The second piece for us was actually more on the academic side, but really wanted to make sure our children were continuing to love learning, and that we felt was a real plus of the Montessori environment in upper elementary.
Can I ask a little bit about what were the specific kind of concerns? What were you worried most about with the prevalence of smartphones?
You know, I just think of childhood as being very distinct from the pressures of having a phone and knowing that you're constantly in communication in this virtual way. We just preferred them to be in the moment, in the real world, with people and in nature and reading books, versus texting and looking at social media and looking for that approval from others and being sort of sucked into the kind of single narrative or like the very dominating narrative at that age that kind of comes across in social media.
Yeah. Well, Eluna, so you're in the classroom. So from a teacher's perspective in the upper elementary, these grades, I'm curious the extent to which you see evidence of this accelerated adolescence in the kids you work with. And if you're not seeing it, what are you seeing instead?
Yeah, I love that question.
So just to clarify, because I realized I probably should know this earlier, when we talk about upper elementary, we're talking about grades 4 through 6.
The likeness that I bring to this topic is it is from a teacher's perspective, but children who are, for example, at the age of 6, who have a very high reading comprehension level and reading fluency level, which means they can they can sound out almost any word, etc. Just because they have the ability to read an adult level book does not mean that they have the emotional processing to handle the content of that book. And that is really the same thing with children who are 9 through 12, the ages of 9 to 12, they are actually not yet ready to handle what social media certainly is presenting, and beyond that, as I mentioned, other forms of media such as news and movies. They're not actually there yet. They don't have the emotional processing nor the life experience to look at that from a perspective that is not stunted, essentially.
So actually, that's kind of where I want to go, is that, we're a bit biased because we have in Montessori, we have these 3-year cycles. In the elementary, it's, this what would translate to grade 4 through 6. I'm just curious about like what you think that additional year of what the 6th grade year does for kids. Why maybe it's like a gift of one more year of childhood, and how it might counteract or sort of mitigate these pressures. So, Carla, maybe you can speak to this a little bit. Like, what's your experience with this, gift of one more year, and how does it align with the developmental needs that you notice in your own kids?
I mean, from what I've seen, that 6th grade year is so important to be the leaders in the classroom and to take on that level of responsibility. And I was actually talking to my son about this because I've noticed that this year for him is really a wonderful year. And I asked, what do you think is important about 6th grade? He's 6th year. He's a 6th year right now. Yeah. And he said, well, really, we look at the 4th graders and 5th graders and we feel that we need to be more responsible than they are, and we need to be leaders. And so what it sounded like he was saying to me is that he felt the responsibility to sort of differentiate from the younger children and take on that responsibility. And, not to mention for the past 2 years, he'd been looking up to the 6th graders and now he is the 6th grader. And he's the younger child in our family too. So for him to get to be in that position of the leader, the older one who's helping the younger children and sort of modeling the behavior, he really seems to be taking on that responsibility and enjoying it, and leading projects. And it's just been wonderful to see. And I think it gives him this extra year to be, playing down a little bit in all these ways we're talking about in terms of technology and social media and smartphones. And then next year he'll, beat the bottom. He'll be the bottom rung again, and he'll have to play up a little bit. But I think it's been really valuable for him, and he's certainly enjoying it a lot.
Yeah. Eluna, how about in the classroom? What do you see about this extra year of childhood?
Yeah, actually, Carla, you said that great. That's it's beautiful to hear from his own words what his experience is, because I couldn't say it better myself. It is there's kind of a twofold situation that I see, which one is actually the protection of childhood. So there are children who in 6th grade they are still very much a child, and as a teacher, it's very easy to see the distinctions there, and very precious and very sweet. And so there is that they still get to have their experience of childhood and kind of finish it through to the end, because oftentimes children who in the beginning of the year and even halfway through the year, they might be who are in 6th grade specifically, they might be in a place of showing more habits or patterns of more pure childhood, I would say. But then by the end of the year, something happens and it all like gets cinched up really quickly. And all of a sudden they're this beautiful leader and clearly ready for 7th grade. And on the other side of it, the children who are more accelerated, they get to have an experience of really learning responsibility in a very specific way, because there is an experience of responsibility and leadership that actually cannot be taught. It can only be learned through experience. And that is what it means actually to be a protector of purity, I would say, which is what children experience. That sort of protector and mentorship cannot be taught. You can't talk about it and then have someone understand it. You can only live through it and experience it. So on kind of a very large universal and social and emotional level, that is one side that happens. And the other piece of that particular experience academically is that as a teacher, I do count on my 6th years and talk to them often about being leaders, about being role models. And they are the ones that I will go to first and claim as an expert, so that they then can teach certain concepts and lessons to younger children. That does not mean that those children are not going to either review the lesson with me later, or that I'm not going to review the lesson prior with the sixth year that I'm asking to do this, of course. But that is also academically one of the best ways to actually internalize something, is to then go back and teach it. And the experience of someone getting to feel that they are an expert, I mean, that is a confidence that you can't, that doesn't compare to anything else. For a teacher or an adult to say, you're an expert in this and I'm sending these children to you, that's incomparable as an experience.
But it's also interesting, like it's happening where other 12-year-olds who are getting a very different message about their inexpertise, right? You know,
Right. Yeah.
Right. So actually, I want to talk a little bit about that. You know, obviously there's this sense of leadership and the social emotional, you know, security that happens if you have that extra 6th year. I assume that safety also opens up for all kinds of intellectual and personal growth as well. So it's not just about another year of childhood, but because they're not maybe worrying so much about the social dynamics of a middle school, they have the ability to get smarter, right? Go deeper. So is there any truth to that hypothesis, Carla? What have you noticed with your kids?
Yeah, I mean, I have noticed that there's much less, or it's a later onset of I want to text my friends all the time, which means because they're not texting their friends all the time, they're reading, they're creating art, they're interested in learning about specific topics in a deeper way. It's sort of, there's an opportunity cost to being sucked into the digital universe, I think. And so that opportunity cost is, they can spend their time doing other things and being, learning about things that they really care about. Like my son is really interested in science and he's really interested in history. And that's the content he consumes when he's consuming content. And he also loves to create origami, and he does that, and he teaches the younger students how to do it. And he is now at the point where he can create his own, in creations that are unique to him. He's not just following directions anymore. He's creating new things, and that's pretty cool to watch.
Yeah. Lindy, do you see it? I'm sure you do. Classroom, big intellectual.
Certainly. Yeah. And in fact, the way you asked that question, it made me connect these two things. The way that I see, in a very simplified way, kind of the development of humans from childhood, adolescence, and then into adulthood. The beginning phase of childhood, the mirror is turned inside as an internal mirror. So everything that they're reflecting is just them looking at themselves. They are seeing themselves through the eyes and the words, the behaviors and the actions of adults around them, as well as their peers around them. The peers are less so, but still play an influence. It is a majority of adults. The older they get, including going only into upper elementary to 12 years old, I'm speaking, is really, it gets more and more into peers, but it's still, the majority of it is adults. When children then reach the age of adolescence, that mirror is turned totally outwards, and they are really only concerned about what their peers think, and they are consumed by their own thoughts and their own feelings and needs. And that is actually physiologically, that's what's going on in the brain. So that can be explained very easily through biochemistry and physiologically what's going on there. Story for another day. And then as an adult, the role and I would say really the growth and opportunity that we have as humans is to turn that mirror both ways, because we've now had the experience of being able to look at ourselves and outwards. And so we are able to see ourselves through the responses that people give us, through the words that people give us, and also on our own to self-reflect and really consider how did I just go through that? And do I want to speak like that again? How do I want to approach the situation? So those are kind of three very overly simplified phases of life. when we rush the stage of the first part, which is a child being able to look at themselves and have this totally open expanse of just expanding their own internal awareness, their internal perspectives of the world, we are preventing them and taking away this time, this crucial time, and really the only time in their life of expanding their own internal space. So what I have seen, just as, again, the physiological kind of parallel to this, the more work that a child does with their hands, the greater they are able to hold a pencil and etc. The more parts of their brain are activated, because we have more connections from our hands to our brain than any other place on our body. And so you see more brain activity in people who have finer motor skills, which is also highlighted in Montessori education. So just as that is a parallel physiologically, this emotional and social kind of example, which is where children in the second plane in elementary are. They're in their imagination. The more that they expand in their mental space and in their imaginative space, the more that they're able to understand the world in a broader context and make more connections in general. They're able to, they have an ecological perspective more than most, the children in elementary. And if we take that away, especially in this sixth year, where they're just starting to realize, oh wait, I have a mirror that's kind of, I think about what other people are thinking, but also I'm just in my own imagination. When we take that away, we're really cutting off the culminating point of this growth for them. And so yes, academically, that is absolutely shown, because they get thrown into a world of being consumed by what others think of them. And again, when they're not emotionally actually ready for that. Well, so it really does take away.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to wrap up relatively soon, but I like to be a contrarian sometimes. So indulge me, and you can.
Many times.
Yeah. Right. All right. So here it goes. Something like, isn't middle school supposed to be a pain? Isn't it always challenging? Are we just coddling kids by keeping them away from these experiences? Is an extra year of childhood really all that valuable? Shouldn't we just, stop softening in the corners, sharpen their elbows, and get them into adults? Carla, what do you think?
I think they're going to go through those tough things regardless. We're not bubble wrapping them where they're not going to have conflict with their friends, or they're not going to have a crisis of self-confidence. We're just putting them in a community that's going to make it a little bit more productive and a little bit less painful. But they're still going to go through, adolescence is painful. I think about, and you probably will have another podcast about the junior high and the benefits of that program. I think there are so many benefits of that program when they're in adolescence. To be in that environment is so many wonderful aspects to it that I think allow them to have the personal growth and go through those tough things in a very supportive environment. And really what you want is the outcome. It's not like the pain itself is the value, right? The outcome is, you want them to go through it, process it, understand it, learn from it. And I think that our community and the way we're structured as a school facilitates that.
Okay, so let me just ask one more question as we sort of wrap up here. So both of you guys can answer this one. Like, what message would you want to share with parents who are on the fence about completing the 3-year cycle in elementary? So this is about our school, but it is for other parents too. Like, what do you want to say to them about the value of this one more year?
Sure.
I think parents are very usually excited about giving their children leadership opportunities. And so I would say that, to me, that third year of upper elementary does that in so many ways, and that you would be, it is a great opportunity for that. I'd go so far as to say you'd be depriving your child of that opportunity to move them. Now, I'm sure there would be trade-offs, but I do think that that's incredibly valuable. And then, Eluna, what you were talking about in terms of the planes of development, I hadn't even, thought about it in that way, that deeply. But I think if you want them to complete their process of fulfilling, their greatest self, and you wouldn't want them to miss out on that phase.
Yeah, really well said, Carla. That's exactly the way I was thinking of it, is that really like give your child the gift of being in a community where they are a leader and where they're actually valorized. Because there actually may not be a time through their entire adolescence where that ever happens again. They might not get the opportunity to be valorized because we can't anticipate what they may experience as they're going through that age. And it's interesting to me, it's so easy. I think it's easier to see the effects of our choices when we look at the very, very young children, because the reactions are so immediate and they're so tangible and palatable and normally audible when children react to the choices that we're making. So like with a toddler, we would not ever yell at a toddler and say, just learn how to tie your shoes faster. Just hurry up and learn how to dress yourself faster. We would never have that reaction to them, but that would be rushing them through that stage of development. And the same thing is true with children who are older. It is much more complex. And so it can be harder to really see, particularly because the work of the child in this plane of development as an elementary age child is all in the head. So we cannot see what's going on up there. That's the thing. And what we are told over and over again as elementary Montessori teachers is that we are planting seeds, and the seeds that we plant, we may not ever see the fruits of. We might not ever even see the sprouts of the seeds that we plant. So we have to trust and give time for the child to have all of the full experience of what they are being offered as a leader, as a mentor, as well as academically, of being able to be a teacher and an expert. We have to give that to them. Otherwise, like you said, Carla, I do believe we would be depriving them of something. And it can be seen. We would be stunting their growth, which is why I think there are a lot of adolescents who are where they are right now.
Okay, well, let's end it there. Thank you guys so much for joining and taking the time to do it. I thought a good conversation, and hopefully gives parents something to think about. And want to thank anyone out there who's still listening. Remember, you can go to groundedandsoaring.org for more podcast episodes and blog posts. Eluna is writing one, I swear.
It will happen. It's coming. Don't rush my process.
All right. We love reviews and questions, all that kind of stuff. So you can get all that on the website, and feel free to share the stuff with friends and all the rest. So anyway, thank you guys for joining me. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It was great.